Hi guys, it's Sadie. Welcome back to the Hear Me Out podcast. Today is one of those days where I feel like I just can't get it right. I just can't get an intro right, for example, but here we are. I'm a little bit delirious, but I think that makes me in great shape to talk about what I'm talking about today. Notice the sarcasm. But I will say, I'm coming at you from the studio as someone who is so not unfortunately, I'm very glad to be in the emotional mental state I am in a romantic relationship context, but at what cost? Because I am so over every past romantic relationship I've had that it's actually boring. It is actually so painfully boring. And I find myself I've talked about being tastefully dramatic on this podcast before, and I find myself being tastefully dramatic sometimes, just to no one but myself, in that I will almost try to channel emotions I had when I was like fresh off of a relationship, you know what I mean? Just so I can feel something particular, or oftentimes feel something that relates to music. Like, there is such a difference. You feel it in your core. I mean, it's obviously, it goes without saying, when you are fresh out of a relationship and you listen to the saddest song ever, fill in the blank, whatever that may be. When you're fresh out of that relationship and you're like in the car with your friends and the window's down, the volume that you're blaring and like maxing out the speakers and you're screaming and all this stuff, like lyrics to really sad songs, like breakup songs, nothing quite matches it. That feeling, that's pretty singular in my head. And I'm not wishing heartbreak on anybody, because genuinely, like, actual heartbreak is physically painful. It is physically painful. So I don't even wish this on myself, but I will say one few positive of being heartbroken is that every single song ever seems to hit. Well, every single sad song ever seems to hit. And, for that week when you're kind of going through the stages of grief and you're kind of in, what's the first one? Is the first one anger? Or no, it's like denial. I don't know. But when you find yourself in some of these stages, it's like, okay, I'm honestly, I get it now. Oh my God. Let me tell you, when I first got my heart broken, someone, hello, the algorithm had shuffled I Almost Do by Taylor Swift. And let me tell you, the first time I heard I Almost Do after getting my heart broken, I'm genuinely just got full body chills. I'm like so delirious right now. I'm having like the sleepy ha-has where my eyes are getting glossy, when like you're talking at anything but I keep wanting to say room temperature, but like your inside voice, anything at above or below some monotone volume, and then all of a sudden my eyes are getting glossy. But I think also part of that is because I'm remembering what it was like to be 14 or freshly 15 and I Almost Do shuffles, and I just remember being so gagged and just like staring at my phone, staring at someone's contact, and just being like, girl, I get it. And there's nothing quite like life after that first breakup, because when you're experiencing like empathy essentially instead of sympathy for songs and their lyrics, and like you just get it. There's no other way to say it than like you just get it. And again, I'm not wishing heartbreak on anyone, so I'm not going to say like I hope you're understanding what I'm saying, but if you do, if you've been here before, you would get it. Again, that's one of the few positives of heartbreak. But then now the other end of what I was trying to say, now I remember, is so there's the fresh out of relationship singing those songs, and then there's like 5 years down the road and you're over it, and then sometimes you still just find yourself trying to channel those emotions just to connect with the music and to have that out of body experience again. And I think that is a really normal experience, and it's mine nonetheless. So that is where I'm at today, is that second realm, that second bucket of emotions, where Olivia Rodrigo is coming out with a new album, for example, and it's called You Seem So Unhappy for a Girl So in Love. I don't believe I butchered that, but that's the sentiment, even if it's wrong. And I remember her announcing the album and me thinking, darn it, I will not be able to really relate to this unless I channel those old emotions. But sometimes it makes me think of Lizzie McAlpine has a song called Vortex, and in the bridge of that song, she essentially calls herself out, saying, I am over this relationship, and yet every single time I need a new song, I come back to these emotions, I come back to you, and I'm just like digging up old things. And I feel like from an outside perspective, like let's say you're talking to a friend and you're beating a horse that you have beat so many times, and again, like you genuinely feel over it, and yet you bring a relationship up to your friend, and your friend is probably thinking, oh my god, this again, like it's been so long, are you not over it? But I feel like you can be so detached from something and still talk about it. Like, I don't know, other people might look at that as an indication like you're still talking about it, it's still taking up space in your mind. But I don't think that's always the case. And again, sometimes out of boredom, it just comes up. Like, why not reminisce? If you're really out of conversation starters, if you're really out of anything to channel, I don't know. God forbid God forbid someone like drags that dead horse back in the room to beat it again. But I, like I said, heard the name of that album, and I don't know what the emotion is. Like, again, it's not selfishness, but it's just kind of like I was almost upset to not be able to really feel this pending album to the best of my ability. And I will probably be thinking about old relationships and things to tie my own experience, insert myself into that narrative, you know what I mean? And this is all to preface what I kind of wanted to talk about today, really, is how I got to this point. And unfortunately, not all of it, but a lot of it has to do with time passing. And that's so annoying. That is so annoying when you are fresh out of a relationship and someone looks you dead in the eyes and says, you know what? It'll pass. It only time heals. Like, time heals all wounds, all this, whatever. That is so annoying. And the last thing you want to hear when you are fresh out of a relationship and you just don't want to feel that way anymore. You just don't want to cry about it. You just don't want to feel that pain in your chest, because my experience of heartbreak is genuinely textbook. And I didn't get it. I didn't get these songs, these books, whatever, until I remember literally sobbing on, and at this point in my life, I prided myself on not crying around people. Like, that's a whole nother thing we don't need to unpack, but I was so beyond like any in-body experience. I was just so beyond caring. I was so whatever. And I remember sobbing at the foot of my parents' bed, and that was so, I think about that experience honestly, and just like thinking about it makes me really uncomfortable, like how vulnerable and open I was. Like, I feel like that was a bonding experience I didn't sign up for. I just kind of like crumbled there. I literally went boneless, and I was on the foot of bed like sobbing, and I like couldn't catch my breath, and I was just like, you only have that first heartbreak once, so you might as well make it good, I guess. But holy crap. And then I remember the playlist that came out of that experience, and just like it wouldn't go away. that whole summer, it did not go away. And then the following school year, there were, people who knew that person, and it would just like come up, and I feel like I needed a lot of distance from that person, and in every way, shape, or form, like Instagram, all this stuff, like not texting, like no contact. There was just no way I would be physically able to stomach seeing that person. And yet, like, he would come up, and people would deliberately talk about this person around me, and I would be deliberate in asking them, please don't. I don't really appreciate it. I don't like hearing, like, I hope they're well, honestly, but I don't need to see them being well. Not at this point in my life. That was the only diagnosis of like strict no contact, which is honestly really difficult, and sometimes it's a lot to ask of a person as well, depending on like how close you are. Like, this person wasn't in my friend group though, and wasn't even like the outer layer of a friend group, and we honestly didn't have a lot of crossover. They lived like further from me during the school year, and I went to an all-girls school, so thank God. Honestly, you know what all-girls school is great for? Not seeing your ex anything. Genuinely. Like, I could not imagine having to go to class and be normal if that person was like in my eyesight and I'm trying to learn, I don't know, like calc. Oh my God. If I was in that honors calc class again and I needed to be I just got full body chills with that idea. If I needed to actually like be a normal person and lock in and learn, like, unfortunately, when I was heartbroken, like, that was the only thing I could think about for a long time. Like, it was such an active effort. It took so much energy to think about anything else. And personally, I which is contradictory to say, because I feel like, honestly, like, I'm pretty good at compartmentalizing things, but I specifically talking about like that first heartbreak, especially, it was like all I could think of. And like in other situations in my life, I don't like deal with grief of any kind like that, and I feel like I actually throw myself into tasks, and I will deal with things like incrementally. It like, and does that make sense? Like, I'll still go to school and like go about my day normally, and it's kind of then like at an end of the day, like each day I will almost like approach my grief, and if it was kind of just like a big chunk of something, then I think of it like in my head, if grief is like a big rock, each day I try to just chisel away a little more of it, you know what I mean, until then all of a sudden it takes a really long time to chisel a boulder, but 2 years down the line, it's not there. It's gone. I don't. That was like probably the worst metaphor I could have come up with, and yeah, that's where my mind went. But so, all girls school, love ya for that, and yet to all circle back to. No one wants to hear that. That is genuinely the worst thing, because also it's so daunting to know that it's a long road, and to know that depending on the severity of this heartbreak and how invested you are in these things. And I think this dynamic also is created from when you are the one being broken up with, because I think, for example, like, you can break up with someone and still be heartbroken that you had to do that. And there's just a lot of different flavors of this. So even though I'm exclusively kind of talking about when you maybe like weren't seeing it coming, or it wasn't you who was instigating this heartbreak for sure. Like, there was nothing that could have prepared you even for as it's gonna hurt, but you also know it's coming because you're the one doing the breaking off. So then you can like kind of come to terms with it and like, you're gonna be okay versus just like the rug being swept from under you and all this stuff. So anyway, no one wants to be told, because imagine someone actually like spelled out, oh, it's gonna be like 2 years. Oh, it's gonna be 3 years, something like that. No one is like wanting to hear, oh, great. So for the next like 6 months, I'm just gonna wake up and you're telling me like no matter how hard I try, like it's still gonna be that pit in my stomach, and I can still have happy moments and appreciate everything around me and go about life normally, and still like you're altered by that, and the way that you process things from there on out is going to be really different, especially in the near future. No one wants to hear that. So that sucks. But one day, I will say, I woke up. One day I woke up and it was all better. No, that's not how it is. But one day I did have a realization, and I genuinely just like, I'm getting so many full body chills this episode. And wow, maybe that's just reflective of, I kind of like look on versions of my old self, and I'm kind of able to like detach from my old self. I mean, the way that, some people talk about their inner child, or like they see images of themselves when they're younger and you feel so far from that version of yourself that it feels like a different person. So I feel like me getting full body chills is just kind of like, I feel so far from these versions of myself, not in a good way or a bad way, just in a way where sometimes I know what it's like to like be back there, and like I almost like can't believe that I had gone through that. I don't know, but I'm digressing about these chills because one day I was working on an assignment or something. Like I remember just it was actually a nighttime, not that it matters, but I get, all deep thoughts and realizations happen at night, I suppose. And I just remember where I was sitting, and I was on my laptop, and maybe it was someone's like maybe it was their Instagram story, and like this is a different person from like the original Heartbreak, but just generally like after having this experience that informed, or it will inform like future, and now I like understand past things, and all around about way of saying, oh my God, like can I genuinely have one straight thought? Like can I start a thought and then in 30 seconds finish it instead of going on all these different tangents? I'm so sorry. This is not good, effective storytelling podcaster of me. One day I was working on an assignment, nighttime, sitting, and went to take a break, pull up my phone, Instagram, their Instagram story, and I clicked on it and I saw their face, and something in me just realized that was not the person it wasn't the version of the person that I fell in love with and then proceeded to like get my heart broken over. You know what I mean? One day, years later, unfortunately, from that breakup, but I just saw their face and it clicked that if I hadn't been, at that point, I feel like I was like 95% over, give or take 95% over this person. Like, I would be able to listen to our old songs, like quote unquote our songs, and not have to skip it or not want to cry or not genuinely be set back for 5 minutes thinking about coulda, shoulda, woulda. Like, things like that really told me that I was over it. And yet I didn't realize like how much I needed to have this epiphany, or like, yeah, just to push me to that final 5%. and to shrug it all off, and again then be able to like add that to the library of old versions of myself essentially, and also add that person to their own library. Sorry, I thought my phone was going off. I threw it on the couch like across the it's a little underhand toss, and I was like, no, I don't have any notes on my phone, like I don't want to be distracted by this. And to add that person to their own library as well of like versions of them, you know, because we go through all these phases, people are meant to change, like all these great things. And something about realizing that, where it's like, why would I, how could I like still be pining over someone when like that someone kind of doesn't exist anymore? And it's not like I could just call them back up if I wanted to and expect them to be that same person. And that's okay. Let's say then like someone does something crappy, like they weren't a great person, and you got your heart broken, whatever. Maybe you even ended this relationship, but you like, because this frankly like can also, when I was thinking about a lot of this, like this can even be applied to like non-romantic relationships, like friends. Like let's say you like had a friendship breakup and you feel really strongly that someone was crappy and all of this stuff, and you kind of have this resentment or maybe just not like great emotions toward them, and you're trying to just be civil, whatever, and yet like sometimes when you see them you kind of get that pang in your chest, like similar feelings reminiscent of a heartbreak, because friendship breakups are also really hard and painful. And wow, not to go down that road, but then also like 2 years down the line from a friendship breakup, let's say, like you can't just be making assumptions, I guess is what I'm getting at, that people, you can't assume that people haven't changed. It's not fair to yourself, it's not fair to them. So if you're, I keep defaulting to like 2 years, but because I feel like that's a solid time frame also of like a lot of change would go on, because I mean, someone did something crappy to you, they're still going to be honestly probably like that crappy person the next day, but then like 2 years down the line they've had so many experiences that they like can't possibly be the same person, right? And maybe they are, but you can't assume, because in this situation you're not necessarily like in contact with them, or like you're not knowing them intimately enough to honestly be able to make that call, you know? And so then maybe let's say you haven't seen this person in a really long time, and they like, you want to think like you don't owe anyone anything, but like for lack of a better phrase, like you kind of owe it to them and like yourself to not make these assumptions. And then yet you have like 2 years later a really crappy experience with them again, and they haven't matured, they haven't done anything. Okay, then fine, like that's fair enough to then be like, oh, okay, well, looks like they haven't changed, sort of thing, at least like not significantly enough to override these like the way that I've like coded you in my brain essentially. But like without that experience essentially to affirm that, you can't assume, you can't assume that people haven't changed. And so then like if you weren't over a friendship breakup, if you weren't over a relationship breakup, like 2 years down the line, well, realistically, like whatever you're upset over and like the person that's at the heart of that, they're not the same person. And maybe this doesn't help at all, but for me specifically, it just clicked that like that one day again where I was just like, wow, if I wasn't fully over this person, which I didn't realize, again, like I didn't realize how much I needed this epiphany to really just know in my heart, like I can fully with my chest say like I am over this person, was just because like, yeah, if I were to call that person up, like the relationship wouldn't resume. It would almost be like meeting a new person in a way, because they've probably had newer, like, other relationships and new friendships, and people left their life, and all this same average human experience you're having. Like, imagine how much you've probably changed in 2 years. And so just seeing that Instagram story and being like, okay, wow, like, it wouldn't be the same relationship if I wanted it to be. And, like, it's sad that it's over, but it's very much like a time capsule. I think, like, versions of ourselves, like, the visual of, putting old versions of yourself back on a shelf, and it's almost like the chapter, like, chapters of your life, like the book analogy. But that visual just, like, helps me think of that as a time capsule. And so, like, that person, that's that version of themselves that's, like, paused in your brain that you're trying to get over. Like, if it's almost like when I ran for sports in high school, they would always say, okay, we're doing 30 minutes of running. It's either 30 full minutes of running or 3 miles. But if you, like, hit the 3 miles before the 30 minutes, like, you had that rest time. But, like, if it took you 27 minutes to run that long, you would have 3 minutes of rest, sort of thing. But you can only rest, like, if you kind of beat the clock, essentially. And so I think heartbreak is like that, in that, let's say the average time to get over it is a year. But your personal experience, you were able to get over someone in 6 months. Great. But let's say it did take you that full year. And then, like, whether or not I'm not doing a great job of this, but, like, you're that person is different after a year, you know what I mean? So, like, they've changed in theory, and, like, you can't just, like, resume the relationship necessarily without, like, doing some square one work and all this stuff. So it's either, like, it's going to take a year or it's going to take 2 years to get over them, and you, like, might be able to beat the clock, but then because of the nature of people changing, like, whether or not you stepped up to the, like, plate, did some work, like, figured it out, I don't know, to whether or not, like, you did that to beat the clock, quote unquote, or then, like, whether or not you, like, after a year, 2 years, like, you got to be over that person, because realistically, like, that version of them does not exist. So, wow, I need to put a pin in it and, come up for air. Let me pause and everyone sit on that. I can't wait for someone to send this to one of my ex-boyfriends. Oh, God. Because I know that has happened before. Oh, goodness. Wow. That's something, isn't it? There's probably more to say about heartbreak, but I think I just kind of wanted to say that one thing. There's always going to be more to say about heartbreak. I mean, that's why a lot of musicians are employed with all of its flavors of heartbreak. I think you owe it to yourself, again, to realize that everyone changes, and if you're still upset about something that happened 3 years ago, that's not to say that's invalid. That is not to say that is invalid. But I would hope that it helps to be reminded that you're just as different as that person that kind of froze in time for you when a heartbreak happened, I imagine. And maybe this was apparent to you all along. It wasn't apparent to me, but maybe this doesn't apply. Just disregard everything, and I hope you're doing well. But yeah, in theory, like, I could make this a whole episode about my tips to get over heartbreak, but realistically, like, it's different for everyone, and, like, a lot of things don't translate, and you do just have to sift through it, the bulk of it, on your own, It's one of those situations where it's like, you can go to therapy, you can talk to people, but at the end of the day, like the human experience, it's going to do its thing, and you're going to need to confront a lot of things and like do that internal work. No one can physically actually do that for you. And then the rest of it's going to have to kind of like work itself out and fall into place. So I think it would be a waste of time to say like a XYZ, whatever. I can only ever really share my experience, and then maybe it resonates with you. But I think this one tidbit felt important enough to me. This one epiphany felt important enough to me to have its own episode. And again, like, I don't want to trivialize like, this is not to trivialize heartbreak, for sure. Trust. That sucks. If you're heartbroken right now, whether or not you believe me, you will be okay. And let me put that out into the universe for you. Maybe you don't want it. Maybe you won't hear this. Whatever. I'm still going to do it. I'm going to be selfish, and I'm going to put that in the world for you, okay? You are going to be okay, coming from someone who is more than okay. Again, to my boredom, but I think I would feel boredom over that first heartbreak any day, I think. I don't know. Sometimes I'm like surprised by how deep I can feel things. Is that like weird? Like, to know that I can feel that deeply, and I think I still got it in me, like, I think there's no such heartbreak like a first heartbreak. Like, maybe I can't really like mimic that, but still, like, the depth, the to know that I can feel so much wholeheartedly, full body, to point of out of body experience, it's kind of crazy. And I know this sounds like some like high drunk thought of it's 3 a.m. and you're out with your friends and you are just so excited to be alive, like, whatever. But truly think about it. I'm glad, even though I wouldn't, want to feel that again. Sometimes it's a nice reminder to know that you can. And that just came to my head, honestly. Like, I didn't really think about it that way before, but I haven't really thought about that situation in particular in a really long time, which I guess, again, like, goes to show I'm over it. I mean, I would hope I'd be over it. Like, it's been 5 years since this first heartbreak, which is crazy how time passes. But anyway, like, I never really thought about it that way, but thinking, like, drumming all this stuff up again, and it's just like, wow, okay, yeah, I went there. That was intense, and I'm not wishing myself there again, but, like, in retrospect, like, I'm okay now. Like, it'll get there, and it's hard, and you gotta wake up, and you gotta do the damn thing, and you're gonna be leaning on people, I would hope, and naturally you do, I think, even if it's strangers, like, whether or not like, you're gonna be leaning on people and all this stuff. But yeah, like, I'm like feet up on the seat in the studio right now, like, really contemplating this. So I think before I say anything, I don't want to. I think this microphone needs to, like, be taken away from me right now. But I'm struggling with how to end this episode, so I guess I'm just gonna say that, like, maybe none of this resonated with you. Maybe it did. Like, I can only ever really speak from my own experience, but not to say it 80 trillion times, but maybe one of these times it'll hammer in your head. Then that you are gonna be okay, and actually you're gonna be more than okay. Like, one of these days you're gonna wake up and you're actually gonna be pretty freaking amazing, and you'll realize that these things, these heartbreaks, it wasn't all for nothing. And if you're bored, I also feel you with that one. Yeah. Good luck, soldier. Let me know how it's going. Go stretch. Have a glass of water and practice gratitude and lean on your friends and know that it's going to be good. And it's going to be more than good. It's going to be great. And got nothing else but follow the Instagram, TBH. at HBU. Hear me out on Instagram for more if you're interested. Also, if you made it this far and you're not subscribed to the channel or you haven't added Hear Me Out to your episodes, but you would like to and you just didn't realize that was an option, feel free. But if you made it this far and you're not interested in either of those things, thanks for making it this far. And that's totally chill too, honestly. I will see you next Sunday.